Hey guys, thanks for stopping by to watch another video here at All I See is W, where in this channel, the goal is to gain on positive proceeds and lead with an altruistic mindset. In today's video, I wanted to cover the overall stock market as well as the Bitcoin market. Also talk about the overall price action with MicroStrategy, sharing with you my overall forecast, as well as cover updates with the big three Bitcoin miners. I'll give you my overall insights on what my price forecast for the year is, as well as going through the Bitcoin mining updates that were just announced by the big three miners. Now, if you're new to this channel, I would really appreciate you hitting the like, subscribing so I can continue to add value in this environment. Let's begin, guys. First off, I wanted to talk about Bitcoin. So overall, we're looking at Bitcoin rainbow price chart indicator. So where we currently are in this bull cycle is that we're still in the accumulation phase in green. It's still cheap. We haven't got quite yet to that hodl in yellow where it'll start getting to the next level of is this a bubble? FOMO starts intensifying, and then we get into the darker hue of selling and maximum bubble territory. The fact that we had our Bitcoin halving in April 2024, we haven't even gone past 1 year cycle yet with the halving event. I think with hash rate increasing by the North American miners, all of that's attributing to the rise in the Bitcoin price. There's also price targets for Bitcoin to reach above 225,000. That was an estimate by H.C. Wainwright for the year 2025. So overall, I think we're still in that accumulation phase and we really haven't topped out yet, especially with also the inauguration that's going to be coming in the next couple of days of trading on the 20th. Here, I just wanted to provide to you my overall technical analysis with the price of Bitcoin. So where we currently are right now with the price hovering at 97,000 because the market reacted today. We saw a 5% drop off with the price of Bitcoin. I have three lines here where the red line is basically the support line that I have established. 88,000 is where I see the support level as potential. And who knows, it may go down even further with the understanding that it went up to 108,000. In orange is what I think the near term tier one uh, support will be in terms of, that resistance. We saw that 108,000 was what was achieved in December, but I think in January, the events leading up to the inauguration, we could very well see Bitcoin price commodity go beyond the 100,000. And just with estimates in 2025, depending on whether that's going to be Q1 or a later quarter, we have price estimates of Bitcoin reaching all-time high of 200,000, around 250,000 is the estimate. Now, why is that the case, right? We'll cover all of those details, but because we had the creation of the ETFs, I think now there is some degree of correlation and causation with the stock market and the Bitcoin market. Especially today, we saw the correlation and causation. With that reaction, we saw a reduction in both sectors. But I think now, because we have Bitcoin heavily involved in ETFs with the creation of ETFs in 2024. That really is a big sentiment for more inflows with cash right now, with investors really hedging, getting involved into ETFs that were created by like BlackRock and Vanguard, for example. I wanted to just share with you an article here in that Bitcoin is winning compared to S&P 500. MicroStrategy's Michael Saylor says others disagree, but just looking at the data, I mean, here what we see is that according to the chart, Bitcoin has grown 432% compared to 56% for the S&P and 50% for NASDAQ. So what is this data telling us? I mean, this is going back since 2020 performance when MicroStrategy adopted the Bitcoin strategy. Investors want to have the biggest return on investment. which is why we're seeing the creation of ETFs. Financial analysts see the value in Bitcoin. It's become a reputable commodity. And that is why now there's been a shift in S&P investing more to diversify into Bitcoin ETFs. So I think overall, volatility is vitality, and we've seen that with the previous cycles of Bitcoin. And I think that this is a big sentiment with Bitcoin in that in the future, we're going to see Bitcoin reach over $1 million. But just from a zoomed in perspective for the year 2025, I think we're in a good state where we're going to start seeing some all-time highs achieved this year. And price of Bitcoin will just continue going up, especially with the global game theory right now, with the United States Strategic Bitcoin Reserve that's going to be announced. But just here, another article on crypto.news here. A quick look at the annual performance of the S&P and Bitcoin in the last decade. So we know that the S&P has, big time companies like Nvidia, Apple, Microsoft, Meta. Nvidia today, with the reaction of news, dropped by 6%, consistent with the price of Bitcoin. But overall, just looking at the performance from 2013 through 2023, Bitcoin performance was 74% in annualized total return compared to 13.3% rate of return from S&P 500. So what does this mean? People are now realizing that there's data points to prove that Bitcoin year over year has been dominating with bigger returns. So that just shortens the time frame to get to your, retirement fund, which is why now people are diversifying, getting more hedge with Bitcoin ETFs, in addition to commodities. So I think that's really the sentiment that we're looking at here because Bitcoin, you can't print more Bitcoin or you can't engineer it. Demand is only going to increase. I think where we are right now with the price, we're only like 1/10 away of the current fair value. And what's interesting is that companies now are using the HODL strategy, similar to what MicroStrategy has done with buying more Bitcoin. In the past, under SEC accounting rules, under GAAP, with Bitcoin on your balance sheet, let's say if the price of Bitcoin was like at 16,000 and at a later point the fair value switched to like 76,000. Well, in order for you to capitalize on that fair value, you would actually have to sell Bitcoin at that price in order for it to reflect the current fair value. But current state, I think what's really attractive now is that the SEC has removed that in that if you have Bitcoin HODL on your accounting sheet, your balance sheet, then that means it'll reflect the current value price. So now when companies generate, their quarterly results, it'll be based on the fair market value. So with the understanding that we're in a bullish cycle right now, Bitcoin above, close to that $100,000, all of that's considered fair value price, and you don't have to go through having to make those transactions in order for the fair value to be reflected. So here is an article, yesterday in that MicroStrategy just continues to buy more Bitcoin. I mean, they have this sentiment where they're just going to continue buying Bitcoin. And I think that's why MicroStrategy, they're the titans of this industry right now. And once we hear more about the US Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, there's going to be a heavy partnership between this company, MSTR. Not to say that MSTR is going to be the only company. We'll have additional companies that will be partnering up with the government. But because MSTR has such a big total Bitcoin holdings reserve, close to like 450,000, that just shows that MicroStrategy is ahead of the game. They'll be number one in HODL, and I don't think there's going to be any company that will catch up closely to that amount here, with current state of like 447,000 Bitcoin. So with MicroStrategy continuing to buy up Bitcoin, that brings up their overall average price with all of the Bitcoin they have up to 62,000 with the recent purchases around like the, 90 to $100,000. So overall, I mean, The cost for Bitcoin is around 62,000. Can you imagine once it breaks through that 120,000, you've already gained 100% just hodling Bitcoin. So that all is going to be reflected in their Q4 quarterly results. So we know that the price of MSTR, it went up to about 550 around mid-November timeframe, and it's been just going down over the course of time. However, the good news is recently, over the past couple of days of trading heading into the new year, we saw that upward trajectory. Although today we saw what MSTR dropped in terms of its share price, down 10%, basically lost everything that was gained yesterday, including a little bit from the uh, Monday market. But I think overall, MicroStrategy from a technicals analysis, because it dropped by like close to 50%, I think that we will see MSTR start V-shaping back up, retesting that 400 zone, and eventually at one point in this quarter, we'll see that retest to that $550 barrier range. So I think MSTR has great potential here because of their strong fundamentals, and their quarterly results for Q4 is going to surprise a lot of people with positive revenue. Now let's take a look at updates on the Bitcoin miners. So just looking at technicals here on a 5-day trading, we see upside here with Mara, CleanSpark, Riot here, 15%, 10%, and 6% with Mara. So good start of the year, although today we saw, a drop off with the big three miners here, like Mara dropped by like 6, 7%, similar with CleanSpark. Riot dropped by about, 3.5%. So that was expected, especially with the price of Bitcoin going down. But just overall, looking at the monthly trajectory here, we see Mara down, CleanSpark down. December timeframe was when, Mara was like at $30. CleanSpark had like a price point of like 17, $18. But where it currently is at like $10, I think it's significantly undervalued. I actually continued dollar cost averaging, buying additional shares because of the reduction in the price, just taking advantage of that because I do think that these three miners, depending on which one will outperform, it's difficult to tell, but I do think that these three big time HODL Bitcoin miners, because they didn't perform well in the year 2024, we're expected to see some upside with these HODL companies. And I think it will be a bigger factor once we hear more about the US Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. But because the month over month performance here, minus 27% for CleanSpark, can you imagine just buying low and then just selling high at a later time once, let's say, it goes 3 to 5x? Let's say if it goes around 20 to $40, you gain on proceeds there. And just scaling out here on a 3 month range here, we see some good upward performance here, right? Just from a 3 month zone. But if we scale out from a yearly perspective, we see Riot and Mara underperforming here. Of course, the CleanSpark net here was around a 0% given the fact that there was huge upside in the beginning of the year. I mean, it started off at like $6, 2024, ran all the way up to, $25, and, where it currently is significantly undervalued. Along with Riot, beginning of 2024, around $18, where it currently is, it's down by 22%. Same deal with Mara. I think that these miners are significantly undervalued, and we are expected to see huge upside with these big three Bitcoin miners in the year 2025. Let's take a look at just overall updates with what Mara announced with their Bitcoin production and mining operation for December. So great news that they got their hash rate increased by 15%, now up to 53.2 exahash. They're the number one when it comes to energized hash rate. They also have the number one Bitcoin holdings on the balance sheet as a Bitcoin miner, increasing their Bitcoin yield per share of 62.7%. So in the year 2024, they mined close to, less than 10,000 Bitcoins. But I think significant, consistent improvements here. Bitcoin has produced 890 for the month of December. So that is around, 1 to 2 Bitcoins mined per hour each day. They're getting close to about, less than 29 Bitcoins, although November's data, they mine 30 Bitcoins per day. Can you imagine how much revenue that would be per day as Bitcoin appreciates to 200,000, which is expected in this year? So great news with Mara here, and I think that the hash rate will continue to increase along with their improvements with their fleet efficiency now down to 20 joules per terahash. So now they're getting into that realm of fleet efficiency as well, on top of being the number one, company with the most hash rate at this time. Let's also take a look at CleanSpark's Bitcoin mining updates. So they announced that they mined 668 Bitcoin in December and 7,000 Bitcoins mined total in the year 2024. So a little bit behind Mara, but I think that as we head into the year 2025 and onward, CleanSpark will eventually start catching up with its hash rate. You see here hash rate growth 287% year over year with a 33% efficiency improvement. So, how is that all done? I think that's through the implementation of getting the leanest and most efficient mining devices out, deployed and energized at the different facilities with the S21 Pro miners. And I think the site, the company plans on achieving a 50 exahash in the first 6 months of this year. So really pushing hard to get that implemented and to catch up with the number one Bitcoin mining with its hash rate. So I think where it currently is, they reached 39.1 exahash, so they're about like, 12 exahash behind Mara, but with the understanding that they're using their 650 million zero coupon convertible note offering, they're going to use that to fully execute their strategic objective in the year 2025. So all of that money is covered to scale up on their bolstered strategy with increasing hash rate and reducing the costs, improving the overall fleet efficiency. Fleet efficiency also improved from like 19 joules per terahash now down to 17.6 joules per terahash. So significant improvement where, a single day high, they reached 22 Bitcoins mined per day. So huge news here. And I think there's a lot of activities going on with the Mississippi site, Tennessee site, and the Wyoming site, which really is going to help them scale up on their operations. So good job with CleanSpark and their management team for really executing, at least for the last couple of months, updates here. Let's take a look at the last company I wanted to cover, and that is Riot Platforms, another Bitcoin mining company that has most of their operations in Texas. So they have a Rockdale facility and a facility that's under development. They went through phase one. They've energized hash rate at the Corsicana facility. Now, one of the interesting things with the Corsicana facility is that that is a 1 gigawatt facility, and it's very difficult to actually find hidden gem locations that really allow for low cost energy and also have that capacity for gigawatt capability, which is why I think there's a hidden gem aspect in Riot platforms. Kentucky site is really a site that was acquired last year, and they were able to increase the hash rate from November to December by close to double there. You see here 1.8 to 2.4 exahash. You see the overall improvement with Corsicana facility, as well as, Rockdale, having that same consistent energized hash rate. And I think with the continual deployment of fleet efficient devices as well as scaling up the operations at Corsicana, I think that's really going to allow Riot to continue building up the hash rate as well as improving on the energized fleet efficiency, bringing down that cost. What's interesting is that Bitcoin produce improved from 495 last month now to 516. So average Bitcoins produced per day is, getting close to about 17 Bitcoins. Their HODL rate now is they're number two in HODL, getting close to that, 18,000 Bitcoins on the balance sheet. So, a little close to half of what Mara has. Uh, I'd say like 40% of what Mara has, but I think Riot is in a position where they will have the number two HODL for quite some time here, and it'll be interesting to see how Riot will leverage the overall Corsicana site, what they intend to do. Will they plan on, utilizing the remaining wattage availability at the Corsicana site to tap into different business sectors like HPC AI? What we saw was that when Iron actually announced that information about tapping into HPC AI, we saw the stock jump up by 40%. So I think there's some huge upside with the Corsicana facility here. So what we see here would be Corsicana. So we have Bitcoin mining happening here, but on the left here, we just see a plot of land where there hasn't been that deployment yet. So whether we see continual ramping up with Bitcoin mining or we see Riot position itself as a hybrid company, I think that really positions the company to really do well. You see here, just with full implementation, 2025 Q4, 46 exahash, and then 2026, 64.9 exahash. So we'll just continue to see that exponential growth there. So it'll be interesting to see how, Mara, Riot, and CleanSpark perform. But I think overall, with the big three miners, we see that 3 to 5x potential here. So most of you are wondering, so how high will Bitcoin go? I'm thinking that in the year 2025, we could potentially see, Bitcoin reach an all-time high of 200,000. There's even more higher prices that are forecasted from analysts. As for MicroStrategy, I do think that there's potential for it to break through that 500, 600 zone in the year 2025. And with Mara, I could even see potential breakthrough of $100. CleanSpark Riot even getting beyond that $50 price range. So I think we're going to see a lot of price action in this year, and of course there will likely be volatility as well. However, I think, this bullish cycle, we're going to see some all-time highs, and that's really going to allow for the miners to outperform here. So let me know what your comments and questions are, and please make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you.